Inshallah, next we're going to move on for a keynote speech from Sister Dalia Mogahed. She is the Director of Research at the Institute for Social Policy and Understanding. She is the CEO of Mogahed Consulting, which specializes in consulting for Muslim societies across the world. She is the former advisor to US President Barack Obama, as well as the former executive director for the Gallup Center for Muslim Studies. Sister Dalia.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you all for taking time out of your busy schedules to be here to support Ilya and to share some thoughts and have a conversation about this important topic. There are a couple things. I was given the topic of transformation, and I want to talk about that. But I also know that the people that were invited to this event were asked to submit questions, and maybe some of you did. And originally, Imam Sohaib and I were going to be answering questions as a part of our engagement tonight. Unfortunately, he was not able to make it because of course, the passing of his mother. But at the same time, it's still very important to me that those who submit questions do get some of those answered. So I hope that there is a way for us to do that during this event. And Fatif, if you have some of those questions, with you, I could start by offering some opening remarks, and maybe we could sit here and have that conversation using those questions as a way to engage the audience. That's okay with you. As I reflected on the topic of transformation, I think that we jump too quickly to how do we transform the world around us, and we want to look at individuals who have made an important contribution to society around them. I think that's very important, but what we have to do before looking at that impact that we have is how do we first transform ourselves? What do we do to fortify our own minds, our own hearts, so that we are able to give rather than to be impacted and to be shut down by the madness that is around us right now, especially as parents. And I really want to talk to you all. There's some young people, but most of us here are parents. I want to talk to both the parents in the room and the young people in the room. I want to give you some of my thoughts on how do we transform our own families so that we are producing future leaders, so that we are producing young people that will make and are making a significant contribution to their society. And as I reflected, I realized that it really starts with being the kind of person that you want your child to grow up to become. I really cannot emphasize this enough. A lot of times people ask about parenting, and they seem to want a magic formula, something that they should be saying, or something that, some trick to producing upright children. And as I thought about my own childhood and those of the people I know, none of our parents were very similar in almost any way. Some parents, were strict disciplinarians, some were more lenient, some were very close to their children, and some had more of a power distance. But what all of the parents had in common who had children that grew up to be upright human beings is that they themselves exhibited those characteristics. It wasn't what they said that was common, it was what they did. And what we all have to realize is that our children have a keen sense of consistency. You cannot fake it with your kids. If you say something different than what you do, they will be the first to notice this. Children have a radar for hypocrisy. And this is what we have to guard against as hard as we can. It is so dangerous for us to use our faith simply as a tool of control, to use it as a way to keep our children within our comfort zone, rather than as a discipline of life that applies to us first before it applies to anyone else. When I reflect on what I saw my parents do, and I think like all of us, all of our parents made their mistakes. But what I think my parents did right is that they conducted their lives with the most excellent of moral, ethical conduct. I saw my parents make huge material sacrifices in order to live their values. That's what impacted me. I saw my parents be generous and giving to people that had no power to help us or to hurt us. Character is in how we treat those with the least power. And don't ever think that your children don't see that, don't notice that. How are we treating those around us? How are we treating each other in the family? How are we conducting our affairs? That is the best predictor of how our children will turn out. Not a magic formula in terms of parenting. So in terms of transformation, I think this is the beginning. This is the heart of it, is how we transform our hearts first and then our families. Second, I think that in transforming the world around us, to come at it, and I'm really reiterating what so many people have said, to come at society around us from a place of generosity, from a place of compassion and the desire to give, rather than a place of need or a desire to be approved of or seeking acceptance. We are living in a time that is unprecedented in the degree to which our community is being attacked. This is just a reality. This is not, it would be delusional to see it any other way. Our community has become a target for so much prejudice that an entire political campaign was crafted around the demonization of our community. So it is a difficult, difficult time right now. And we have to recognize that, especially for our children. Our children are being bullied, many of them in school, sometimes by their own teachers. So to deny this is delusional. To deny this is insensitive to our children and what they're struggling with in many cases. Alhamdulillah, some people are having no problems. But we have to recognize that. And yet, at the same time, in the midst of this onslaught, I am asking us to return, to look back at the society around us from a place of generosity. To respond not by having a sense of deficit, a sense of insecurity, a sense of inferiority. Because when you think about this deficit, this sense of insecurity, whether we look to society as something, as a place where we are asking for acceptance or approval to validate our existence, or we're looking at society as something to conquer, as something to dominate, as something that is somehow an enemy. In both cases, we are actually not following the sunnah, and in both cases, it comes from a place of insecurity. If you look at the Prophet ﷺ, in the midst of the most difficult time of his mission, his time in Mecca, when he was himself demonized and abused, his followers sometimes even tortured, he never looked to the wider society from a place of need or a place of asking for something. He always approached people from a place of generosity, a place of wanting to give them something, to give them the truth, to give them a better understanding. He always approached people from a place of compassion. The only one he would approach from a place of brokenness is Allah. A place of need is Allah. The only person, the only relationship that was sourced in need, in seeking approval, in seeking to go in his vulnerability, was when he spoke to Allah. But with the people, it wasn't about conquering and it wasn't about acceptance, it was about generosity. He wanted to give them something. He wanted to save them. And that's really what we're dealing with right now. Because everything around us, brothers and sisters, is not just a threat to us. All of the injustice and bigotry that we see in the news, in society, sometimes in our children's schools, it may be hurting us first, but it is a symptom of a wider toxic climate that is hurting every single American. And it will be on us to lead, yes, lead our country out of this difficult time in our history. So I'm going to stop there, and I'd love to continue with some of the questions we got.
Jazakallah khairan, Sister Dalia. Inshallah, we've selected two main questions that we wanted to go over, especially due to time and getting the other speakers to speak. There were two of them that really hit us, and we thought that would be very good to speak about. The first one had to do with a sister asking that, can you share with us what it meant to be an advisor to the U.S. president? What was your day like? Can you share what it took for you to get to such a senior role? And as a follow-on to that, for sisters that are in high school that want to make an impact, what would your advice be?
Those are like 4 questions in one. Let me start with the last one, though, the last part of that question, which is, what's my advice to sisters or brothers that are seeking to make a difference? And I will start, I think it's 3 parts. The first part is always to start with the heart. The heart is the foundation of everything else. I one time posted, I think what may have been a controversial, reflection on Facebook. I didn't mean it to be, but I think it ended up being somewhat, there was some disagreement, but I'm going to repeat it here. I disagree with the premise that the family is the foundation of, or the building block of society. And we always hear that. The family is the building block of society. The family is, of course, very important. And we all grow up in, we need families to be strong and so forth for functioning human beings. But I actually think the human heart is actually the building block of society. Because you can't have healthy families if you don't have healthy human hearts. You can't even have healthy individuals when you don't have healthy human hearts. So how can you make a difference? You have to start with your heart. You have to strengthen your heart. And Allah told us how to do that. We learn, the Prophet ﷺ told us that the heart is polished with dhikr. That everything rusts and everything has a polish. And the polish for the heart is the remembrance of God, is the remembrance of Allah. So to actually start with that, it may seem somehow unrelated, but it's incredibly important to start with your heart and strengthen it. If you aren't able to wake up for Fajr, then you absolutely can't change anything. You have to change yourself. That's the first thing. The second thing is you have to hone your skill. Whatever that skill is, you have to discover your talent, and then you have to hone it. You have to develop it. Think of your talent as your gift from Allah. This is your ni'mah. This is your rizq. And Allah tells us that the best way to show gratitude for what He has given us is to use it in His way. That means you have a responsibility to develop your God-given talent to serve Him. It's not even a choice. It is an obligation on you. Discover that talent and then develop it. And then the third thing that you have to do to make an impact is you have to join with other people. You can't do it alone. You can't be isolated. You have to connect with other like-minded, conscientious people that are working toward your goal, whatever that might be. It might be you might be really passionate about the environment, and you might be a phenomenal writer. Hone your skill as a writer, and then connect with other people who are interested in that topic and work with them to make a difference. So that's the last part. These are generally my three pieces of advice for anyone wanting to make a difference: your heart, your talent, and then create relationships with other people who want to do the same thing. Work with others. My own work, I'll start with my role on the advisory council. I didn't work on President Obama's campaign. I wasn't really connected to politics in that way at all. I didn't really have any connection to President Obama or to Senator Obama when he was running. I worked at Gallup. I was a researcher, and I did research on Muslim communities around the world. And I co-authored a book with John Esposito called Who Speaks for Islam? What a Billion Muslims Really Think. And the work that I was doing was gaining more attention because it helped to give ordinary people a voice. It helped to give empirical evidence put into a very emotional debate about who Muslims really were. And here was science that was helping to answer questions. So I believe, because I actually never was told how this happened, I believe that someone who advised him or was around him became familiar with this work. So one day, I was in my office and I got a call from someone at the White House that basically said, I was talking to the president and we'd like to invite you to be an advisor. That's literally how it happened. SubhanAllah, that was it. It sort of like dropped from the sky. And the role, I do want to clarify, I've clarified it so many times, but I think it keeps kind of getting needing re-clarification. My role was an honorary advisory role. I was not an employee of the White House. I still kept my day job. My job was at Gallup. I was the executive director of the Gallup Center for Muslim Studies. And what the White House does is it appoints honorary advisors that help to provide thoughts and advice to the White House on different topics. And that's what I did. It wasn't a day-to-day thing. I didn't go to the White House every day. It was something that I did on the side as I was continuing my work. And really the position taught me the importance of not only access, but of organizing. You see, during the Obama administration, Muslims never lacked access. We had lots and lots of access to the president and to his senior advisors. I, for example, 2009, right when they started, was appointed to this position. And many other people had access to the president in different ways. We had access. What we lacked, though, was the gravity of saying we have this many people organized and mobilized to do X, Y, Z. And when you come to the table with that kind of weight of organized people and organized money, then your voice has weight. Access is not enough. We think if we can just get to the right person and tell them something, it's going to make a difference. That's totally not how it worked or works, and that's what I discovered. The other people on the advisory council not only had the same access as me, that was equal, but they brought a lot more weight behind them. And so that's how they were able to have influence. Influence is not just access, it's access plus organization. And that's what we have to do, I think, a much better job of.
Thank you so much. The second question that we have, I think it was actually very similar to the first point that you were making about impact and about the heart. The question was specifically, also from a high schooler. Some Muslim people I know stopped praying and practicing because of the violent scenes that we see usually. Many of them that people try associating with Islam. And as a result, they start to doubt Islam. What role can a young Muslim in a leadership capacity play on this issue?
Yeah, this is a huge issue. I have always been under the impression that Islamophobia is mainly targeting non-Muslims to demonize Islam and make things hard for Muslims. And one day I actually realized that Islamophobia's main target is Muslims, not non-Muslims. Non-Muslims are a secondary target. The main target of Islamophobia are the hearts of Muslims, especially young people, to make them feel inferior and doubtful of their faith, to create a social cost of being a Muslim. There is a huge social cost to being a Muslim right now, to make it difficult for them to continue. And if you think about the very first generation, Islamophobia is not like a new invention. There's nothing original about Islamophobia. It's since the beginning, the first day, there was this concerted effort to spread lies about Islam and Muslims. And when you think back to those early Meccan days, who were actually the targets of Islamophobia? It was actually the Muslims. It was to make them leave Islam, is to make them doubt, and to discourage anyone else from joining them. So it's not surprising that this young person is saying that this is happening, because there's a $200 million industry trying to make this happen. It's hardly shocking. So what can we do? And I actually do think programs like Ilya are central to the answer to that. We do need concerted efforts in instilling confidence, a sense of identity in our young people. We also have to have organizations and scholars that are able to respond to really the greatest threat, I think, the greatest intellectual threat to Islam. It's not Christianity, it's nothing like that. It's actually atheism. This is really, they are targeting Muslims. I am shocked by how much they target Muslims. I thought new atheists were basically kind of against religion in general. They're not. They're actually very focused on Islam itself, and it may be because it's a religion that still holds some weight with its followers. We need, and in every generation, Islam has faced an intellectual challenge or an intellectual threat. Right now it is atheism, and we need the ability to respond coherently to these things. But the intellectual threat is secondary. It really is a threat to the heart, and we have to help our young people strengthen their heart and their relationship and their love for Allah and His Prophet as the best defense against this. And it starts with our communities. You see, what these folks do is they use actual problems in the community and exploit them. They use the actual issues we do have that we're not addressing, that we're denying, and they use that as the crack to go in because young people see it. You see, here's the thing with young people. They are incredibly clear-eyed. Their innocence expects consistency. And so they see where we're teaching one thing but behaving in a different way. And when they see that inconsistency, it creates the seed of doubt. And then these other people come in and they use that and they exploit it to really turn the hearts away from Islam. So I think the biggest thing we can do is strengthen our own communities by being consistent, by making our faith our actual blueprint for our behavior, by closing that gap between the values that we're called to and the way that we actually conduct our lives and the way that we treat each other in our own communities.
so much, Sister Dalia. Can I get a round of applause, inshallah, for Sister Dalia? Allahu Akbar. Takbir. Allahu Akbar. Thank you so much for your time, Sister Dalia. We learned so much, and alhamdulillah, she's a role model for all of us, brothers and sisters alike.
I think that we've definitely made improvements, and we've come a long way. But we have a very, very long way to go. And the thing that I think we need to really recognize is that we can't do it alone. We're a very small community. I know we feel like we're a ton of people because we see Muslims around us everywhere. But on a national scale, we're 1% to 2% of the population. What that means is we need allies. We need allies. The Prophet ﷺ did not open Mecca alone. He had allies, and he had, including non-Muslim allies. You have to study the seerah, right? If you study the seerah, what you'll find is that the way that the Meccans broke the peace treaty, which ultimately led to the fall of Mecca, was that an ally of theirs attacked an ally of the Muslims, and that ally of the Muslims was a non-Muslim tribe. Okay? That's what broke the treaty. So the idea that we can have non-Muslim allies is established. Of course we can. We don't compromise our faith, but we work together toward a common goal of justice for all. And that's what we're lacking right now, is we're too isolated. And the other problem, sister, is we are too committed to running after and fixing people who hate us, right? They're all the way over here at the extreme, and we run after them, trying to get them to stop hating us, when there's all these people around us with their hands stretched out that we're not even seeing, that we're not responding to. And that's what we need to change. We need to actually people want to stand in solidarity with us. The NAACP, for example, they said very recently that if there's a Muslim registry, they'd be the first to register. That's an outstretched hand of friendship and solidarity that we need to respond to, rather than running after people who hate us. So the way that we can make a real difference politically, socially, is not by ourselves, but in coalitions with other people.
Jazakallah khairan. This point of allies and working together is something that even in Ilya, we partner with the Howard County and several of the counties in the area to work with their schools, their prisons, and to create partnerships. And inshallah, that's something we can create. Thank you so much, Sister Dalia. Jazakallah khairan. One more round of applause, please, inshallah.